I wasn't snooping. I opened iCloud to check storage space, and instead found screenshots that made my stomach drop. It's wild how fast your world can flip. One minute you're making dinner, casually stirring sauce and humming along to a playlist you made together. The next, you're staring at evidence that the man you love has been emotionally undressing someone else through a screen. I'm not a paranoid person. I don't believe in reading texts or checking emails. I always thought, if you have to go digging, there's already a problem. But I didn't dig. It found me. That night started normally. I'd just gotten out of the shower when my phone buzzed with a low storage alert. I opened settings, tapped iCloud, and noticed something weird. A file folder synced from his device. Not just photos, but entire text thread backups. For a second, I hesitated. You know that moment when your heart speeds up, but your mind tries to calm you down. It's probably nothing. Maybe it's work-related, but the folder was named Favorites, and one of the previews read, "I can't stop thinking about last weekend. Your lips." I froze, fully towel-wrapped, dripping wet, standing in the hallway like someone had just pressed pause on my entire existence. I tapped the file. It opened a saved PDF of a chat log, exported from his iMessages to her. And it wasn't just flirting. It was intimate, familiar, messy. Like this wasn't their first time. They'd been talking for months. Her name was Lindsay. He saved her as Linz. They had pet names, inside jokes, conversations about dreams, regrets, and memories I wasn't a part of. And worst of all, he told her things I'd been begging to hear for years. He wrote, "You make me feel like I'm finally seen." I read those words over and over again, heart thudding so hard I could hear it in my ears. This wasn't just about what he said, it was how, his tone, his attention, his emotional availability. Things he told me he wasn't wired for. I didn't say anything that night. I closed the file, went back to chopping garlic with shaking hands. I watched him walk into the kitchen, kiss me on the forehead, ask about my day. He had no idea the glass between us had already cracked. The next morning, I printed the messages. Call it petty, call it preparation, but I wanted him to see them on paper, because sometimes you need to hold the truth in your hands before someone will stop denying it exists. He scanned the printed messages in silence, then looked up and said, "This isn't cheating. We never even met." That sentence should have broken me. Instead, it clarified everything. I'd spent the entire night rehearsing what I'd say. I didn't sleep. I sat on the couch with those printed pages in my lap, reading and rereading, trying to decide what would hurt more, staying or finally saying something. When morning came, I waited until he finished his coffee. I didn't make a scene. I just slid the stack of papers across the table and said, "Tell me who she is." His eyebrows furrowed in confusion, a performance I'd seen before. Then his eyes dropped to the page. He recognized the layout immediately, the color-coded bubbles, the timestamps, his words. The silence stretched. Then came the shrug. I mean, it wasn't physical. That's when I knew. Not just that he'd done it, but that he didn't understand what he'd done. He leaned back in the chair, arms crossed, like I'd caught him jaywalking instead of emotionally investing in another woman behind my back. "We were just talking," he said. "It's not like I slept with her." I stared at him. "You told her you loved her. It was just words. But you've never said that to me in months." He didn't answer, and that's when it hit me. It wasn't the messages that broke us. It was the meaning behind them. He had opened a window into his real self, not to me, the woman he lived with, shared bills with, made life plans with, but to someone he barely knew outside of a screen. This wasn't some one-night mistake. It was consistent, curated connection, texts every morning, inside jokes, deep talks, vulnerability. That's intimacy. And he gave it away to someone else. For weeks now, he'd been acting different, not colder, but lighter, like a man carrying less guilt. Turns out, it's easy to sleep well when you've already convinced yourself you've done nothing wrong. "I never even saw her in person," he kept repeating, like that was some kind of moral high ground. I said, "If I'd done this with another man, would you still be this calm?" His face hardened. "I'd be gone." Exactly. I didn't scream. I didn't throw things. I didn't cry. Not then. I just picked up the pages, tore them in half slowly, and dropped the pieces into the trash. Then I said, "You just lost someone who gave you every chance." He followed me down the hall, voice rising now, backpedaling, apologizing, offering excuses. It just started as a joke. I didn't mean for it to get emotional. I was bored. I didn't think you'd ever see it. That last one stuck in my ribs. I didn't think you'd ever see it. Because that was the truth, wasn't it? He didn't think I was looking. Didn't think I could look. Didn't think I mattered enough to guard his behavior. He underestimated me. And that's when I realized this wasn't about Lindsay. It was about me, waking up. He changed his passwords, deleted the chats, and said, "See, it's over." But all I could think was, so are we. After our confrontation, he switched tactics. He stopped minimizing and started managing. That's what men like him do when damage control becomes their last defense. First came the digital cleanup. Within an hour, the Lin's thread was wiped. His Apple ID was locked down, shared calendars unlinked, and just like that, I was no longer connected, not just digitally, but emotionally, spiritually, every way that used to make us us. He stood in the living room that night with a cheap kind of confidence, like deleting messages erased the meaning behind them. There, it's done. I took care of it. As if this was a broken faucet. As if all I needed was to see that he'd hit delete, and I'd go back to making pasta and folding his laundry like the version of me who didn't know better. But I wasn't her anymore, because what he didn't understand, what he still didn't get, is that the betrayal didn't start with Lindsay. It started with every little moment he pulled away from me and gave himself to someone else. Every dry, okay he texted me while writing paragraphs to her. Every time I asked how his day was and got a shrug, while she got, "You wouldn't believe what happened at work today." Every time he told her things, I begged to know. That's what hurt. It wasn't about a kiss. There never was one, apparently. It wasn't about sex. There was none, he claimed. It was about being left behind emotionally, piece by piece, while he built a parallel version of himself and handed it to someone else. And I would have taken it. I would have forgiven, if he had just owned it. But instead, he wanted to be the good guy who slipped, the faithful husband who made a dumb mistake, the misunderstood partner who just needed someone to talk to. I couldn't do that. Not anymore. I spent a week in limbo. I didn't move out. I didn't blow things up. I went to work, cooked dinner, slept on the far edge of the bed. We existed like roommates, trying not to bump into each other. He acted like that meant things were getting better, but in my head, I was already packing. I started noticing things differently, not his absence, but mine. My silence didn't feel like peacekeeping anymore. It felt like self-abandonment. And once I saw that clearly, I couldn't unsee it. One morning, I woke up, and I wasn't sad. I was done. That's the part people don't understand about emotional betrayal. You don't leave the moment your heart breaks. You leave the moment you realize it won't heal with them. I didn't yell. I didn't leave a note. I just took a weekend bag, left my ring in the drawer, and drove to my sister's. He called. I didn't pick up. He texted, "Are you really doing this over some messages?" And that was all the closure I needed, because the fact that he still saw it as just messages meant he never really saw me at all. The last thing he said to me was, "You're being dramatic." The last thing I felt for him was nothing. I stayed at my sister's for 3 nights. She gave me space, didn't pry, just poured coffee in the morning and wine at night. We didn't talk much about him. She knew I'd speak when I was ready. I wasn't crying. I wasn't spiraling. I wasn't second-guessing myself. Honestly, I was breathing easier than I had in months. That silence, the absence of tension, of performance, of walking on eggshells, it felt like freedom. On the 4th day, he showed up. I watched his car pull into the driveway from the kitchen window. He didn't knock at first, just stood there, hands in his pockets, pacing in that anxious way he always did when he wanted to seem harmless, but was really preparing to push. I opened the door, not to talk, but to finish this. He looked tired, rough around the edges, like he hadn't been sleeping. I almost felt bad for a split second. Then I remembered all the times I lay awake at night, next to a man who made me feel alone in my own home. "I just want to talk," he said. "You've already said everything," I replied. He held his hands out like that meant he was defenseless. "It was never real. I didn't love her. I never even touched her." "I know," I said. "That's what makes it worse." He blinked, thrown off. "You gave her the parts of you I begged for," I continued. "You gave her the version of yourself I waited years to meet." He opened his mouth to object, but I held up my hand. "I'm not here to fight," I said. "I'm not here to listen either. I just need you to understand that I'm not coming back." "You're being dramatic," he said, like that was his final play. His big win. I almost laughed. That word, dramatic, has been used against women for centuries to silence the truth when it makes men uncomfortable. I wasn't being dramatic. I was being done. There's a difference. He turned to leave, muttering something under his breath. I didn't ask what it was. I didn't care. I watched him go and felt nothing. No sadness, no rage, no regret, just relief. That night, I slept better than I had in a year. No buzzing anxiety, no second-guessing my worth, no pretending everything was fine when it wasn't. I don't know where Lindsay is now. I don't know if he still texts her. That's not my story anymore, because here's what I do know. Love isn't always loud when it's lost. Sometimes it slips away quietly, the same way trust dies, not with a bang, but with 1,000 ignored moments. And when you finally walk away from someone who doesn't see you, you don't feel broken. You feel free.